Welcome to the Live Explore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sean Payne, co-host of the Housing Signal podcast. I have with me my co-host, Isaiah Chass. Isaiah, thanks for joining today.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to be talking about what's going on in the real estate industry and specifically like what could be happening with buyers, agents, commissions that way.
There's a lot going on with it. If you haven't paid attention to what's happening in the news, it's there's a lot of change coming down the road, and a lot's been happening, I'd say, over the course of the past 2 years, but specifically in the last 2 weeks to a month, it's really come down.
Yeah, no, this has been somewhat anticipated by some people. I would say that we kind of felt that it was coming down the road. And there's, actually like 5, maybe 6 lawsuits that are somewhat similar, I understand, within the industry. But there's really 2 that we're going to focus on that's in all the headlines right now. The Moehrl case, that was making headlines a few weeks ago. That is going, that trial starts next year. Some of the defendants have already settled that, but what's really in the paper now is the SitzerBurnett case that everyone's talking about. And just last week, was last Thursday, Friday, I can't remember now, they came down with a decision. The jury came back with a decision that way. So
yeah, so the SitzerBurnett commission lawsuit, I guess we'll get into what the jury finally awarded, but it's in excess of $1.8 billion, and it could be tripled to over $5 million if the appeal does not lower that.
Right. Yep. Because it's an antitrust case. The federal government doesn't like those laws being violated. So yes, potentially that $1.8 million number could be tripled. So we'll see how that plays out. Also included in that, attorney's fees are not included in that because it's an antitrust law issue. It's against public policy, so insurance companies will not cover it. So the brokerages or the defendants themselves will be found liable for it and have to pay it themselves. Mm-hmm. So let's kind of just jump into it a little bit. So what happened was the complaint from this case, from the SitzerBurnett case, is basically saying that the sellers didn't know they were paying the agent. They didn't understand the commission structure. They weren't being informed that they were paying the buyer's agent. And in one case, one of the defendants said, I didn't realize I was paying for an agent to work against me. And so buyers and sellers weren't being properly disclosed about what they were paying and the amount that they were paying that way. And that's what started this case. This is in Missouri. Isaiah and I are in Sonoma County, California. And so California's forms, I think, are a little bit more spelled out that way, and that from my understanding of the Missouri forms, in that ours are pretty clear that what the commission amount is and where that commission's going that way and who's representing who. And it sounds like that, we have these forms in place because we're quite litigious here in California. We have quite a few lawsuits. So a lot of these lawsuits we've had already in the past, and that's why our forms, are so clear that way. But it sounds like it wasn't clear on the forms, and the agents themselves weren't explaining how the commission was structured. So
yeah, and maybe we'll do an overlay of a listing agreement so that the listeners, if you're not within the industry, that you can get an idea. But in California, our listing agreements show that there is a total commission, and then from that total commission, the buyer's broker is entitled to X percentage, and in there you input that cooperation agreement, whether that's 2.5% of the total 5% or 3% of the total 6%. Obviously, that's determined on a case-by-case basis.
Yes,
it should
it's
be
a conversation.
And that's part of the argument that they make. I completely forgot my train of thought from NAR. So for those of you that aren't in the industry, within the past week, NAR has now said that they are not requiring sellers to offer buyer broker commission. Now, in the
Correct.
past, they did. So that is a big change.
That is, yeah, that's a very big change, and so like from that issue of those defendants bringing these issues to court, basically what they've been accused of collusion, steering, and misrepresentation, and so the collusion happens when NAR articulates rules that you have to fix commission at certain rates and create the impression that it's not negotiable. And then brokerages teach that to agents. So with NAR, they had a policy in place that the buyer's agent had to be offered compensation. So they were the ones that setting that. Now, again, they've already changed that policy, which in the past they never would allow that to happen. So the thing is that more sophisticated markets, and what I mean by that is like higher value markets, again, they tend to have more lawsuits. And so these conversations have already happened or in that sense, or when you're dealing with commissions, it's something that we talk about. I can't think of a listing that I've never not talked about commissions and how it's split that way. So,
right.
So,
well, should we get into a little bit about what could happen with this? I mean,
well, let me jump first. So we have the collusion part, and that's again NAR articulating the rules, and then also steering. So some MLSs will allow agents to sort offers of compensation. So agents, basically they have the ability to go into an MLS and say, okay, well, I'm going to sort the homes by the compensation offered. So, I'm not going to show a home at 2.5% commission or higher. The rest of them I'm not going to show. That's crazy. Again, in our MLS, we don't have that ability. I don't believe we've ever had that ability.
I don't think so.
I can honestly say I've never searched, put together a home search just based off buyer commissions that way. So that was part of the steering portion. And then the misrepresentation side, buyer's agent. And this really came down to, this is something we have an issue with in the industry. I've heard that as many as 90% of the national members of the National Association of Realtors are part-time realtors. But buyer's agents, particularly part-time agents, market their services that they're free and that they're paying the buyer's commission through the sale of the home. And so even the buyers really didn't understand how it was structured, that the seller was paying the buyer's commission, and a lot of questions came up that way. So again, a lot of this came down to like the actual legal forms weren't spelled out like we have here, and it seems like you had a lot of unprofessional professionals not properly disclosing things that way.
Yeah, we certainly knew that there was going to be lawsuits coming down the line from the pandemic when there was such an influx of new agents, especially new agents that just wanted to make a quick dollar and didn't really have the client's best interest in mind. I'm not sure that this is what I expected the lawsuit to be from the new agents. Regardless,
it's happened. It's here.
Yeah.
And I think this shows within the industry that more transparency is needed that way. That's what everyone's asking for. Again, we seem to do a better job of it here, so that's why we're not really dealing with this. This case happened in Missouri, but the brokerages that are the defendants are national brokerages, so that's why there's repercussions on us, and that's good. Like the whole industry will change that way. But like getting back to the 1.8 million and the potentially 5.4 when it's tripled billion. Billion. Oh, yeah, that's right. I keep saying that. The 1.8 billion or potentially 5.4 billion. Those numbers really don't mean that much. It really comes down to how much each brokerage can pay and how much NAR can pay. If through this court case, if one of these brokerages were to go out of business, then the plaintiff would get less money. So no one's trying to do that. So again, a couple of the defendants, Remax and Anywhere, settled for 55 and 58 million just a couple weeks before.
Looking back, gosh, what a
right.
a good move on their part.
Yeah.
At the time, you think, oh my gosh, they settled for $55 million, and then you see what the jury awarded on this, and you think they were certainly ahead of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And why didn't the other brokerages? Why didn't NAR negotiate? Right, like so that.
just from their messaging, I think they have their head in the sand a bit.
We'll get back to that. That's exactly it. Yeah. But so right now there's 1.6 million realtors through the National Association of Realtors. There's 1.6 members, and so there's speculation. This is all speculation that what will happen is that we will receive an assessment. Each member will receive an assessment to help pay off that bill. Right now, NAR has about $100 million in the bank, so they're a ways off that way. So there's some speculation. Maybe it could be negotiated down to a point that they could pay, or most likely, we're going to pay for this, we as being realtors that way. And we'll see exactly how much that'll be. I mean, as of right now, if there's 1.6 million realtors, and let's say like the case is for 1.6 or something like that, it's basically like $1,000. But I think what you'll see is that you're going to find the market's dropped. A lot of people aren't making money. Those part-timers that jumped in when the market was hot in 2020 and stuff like that, I don't think they're going to pay it no matter what it is.
Right.
And I think they'll start dropping out, which will mean potentially some of us will have to start paying more that way.
Right.
But I think that's what's going to happen, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's way too many agents in the game, not full-time agents, and so we need this clearing out. Hopefully there'll be some like type of educational component too, but this is one way to do it. So
yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is the barrier of entry to get into real estate, I don't know so much in other states. I know it's pretty similar to the state of California. I think the state of California is actually probably a little bit harder than a lot of other states. A lot of other states have reciprocity between them. So if you have your license in one state, it carries over to another. But just in California alone, I mean, it's so easy in the big picture to get a real estate license. And you look at it, buying a home for, I'd say 90% of people is the biggest decision they'll ever make in their life.
Right.
And it's shocking that the barrier of entry to get to the point where you have a fiduciary duty to assist that person make that decision is actually, it's surprising.
Yes.
I mean, you think of how long it takes to become an attorney, or a financial advisor for that matter,
right,
compared to
the real estate exam.
Yeah. I mean, the real estate exam, really, you take a couple courses. I think it's 3 courses for a salesperson license and additional 5 for broker. Mm-hmm. Still, it's so low. And again, you're helping, you have a fiduciary duty to help your client make the biggest financial decision they have ever made if they're a first-time home buyer. Right.
And so like what happens in a hot market is everyone wants to become, a real estate agent because it's good times,
Right.
And so that's what happens. And then people start using people that don't have experience, that really aren't full-time agents, that really just don't hone their craft, or their craft hasn't been honed yet. 70% of buy-side transactions are closed with part-timers, not full-time agents.
Wow.
So, I mean, just think about that and all the complications that come up. And that's one of the good things is like when those agents get cleared out, transactions do become cleaner and easier that way because you don't have the mistakes of those part-time agents. And then again, that's why we have these lawsuits, is that you come out of a hot market like that, and a lot of people didn't have the representation they should, and they paid a lot of money for homes in a very competitive time, and now they're mad. Mm-hmm. That's
totally
understandably.
I mean, think about all the new agents that wrote offers on country properties with well and septic with no inspection contingency.
Yeah, I mean, how many times did we talk about that and we saw that, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. I can't even believe it. And anyone that is within the industry for a good amount of time, or is, even if they're in a short amount of time, but they have the guidance of a team or someone that has extensive experience, they would never make that decision for their client.
Right. I mean, the culture really became non-contingent offers, which again is crazy.
Yeah.
So it's just a really bad thing to happen to the real estate industry. And again, it was like a lot of young agents like, what? Just write no contingent.
Right. I mean, how many non-contingent offers have you written?
Yeah, I mean, like a handful. Yeah. Very, very few. And usually it was because there was always previous knowledge of the property. Maybe they're in contract before with some circumstance
they're
like that.
They're a contractor.
Yeah, something of that nature. But it was like, hey, we're going to do that. And I just hear young agents talk about that. Young agents that just got into the business, not young in terms of experience, not age. And yeah, I would just
The
be like,
very first offer
"Holy
they had
cow."
written was non-contingent.
Right,
It's just,
right.
It's
Or maybe
crazy.
they have never written anything but a non-contingent offer, right?
Right.
So here we are. So let's talk about what potential changes could come in the industry that way. I think a lot of this is going to come down to every representation now. We've already had the discussion on the seller side, but now I think there's going to be discussion on how the buyer's agent's going to get compensated, and there's going to be buyer's agreements put in place. So it's going to be interesting. Other industries, Washington State has been at this model for a few years, and it really didn't change much. But we'll see what happens that way. Within the MLS for real estate professionals, the changes that you'll see is that the MLS will have changes in the coming weeks or months. I know that we got a notice that our MLS was going to be down for upgrades. I'm assuming maybe this is what's going to happen. But the MLS will no longer show the offers of compensation on listings in the MLS. So again, some listings before, I guess you could search by compensation. You could never do that here. But now there's not even going to be a field for compensation. Like the MLS is just going to be like a place for information and transacting on homes that way.
Which will be interesting in and of itself, because part of the protection currently for a buyer's agent of the commission they will get paid is based on what is inputted into MLS.
Right.
If there's nothing inputted, I suppose you could get an offer accepted and then at that point say that there's no buyer commission offered, and really at that point you don't really have anything that you can do. You can't put an agreement in place after the fact that you are, entitled to compensation. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a buyer's compensation agreement that can be written a couple ways, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. No one is going to be required to be a part of the National Association of Realtors, NAR, or follow their code of ethics. So, I'm trying to think of a funny joke, but I'll just bypass on that. We'll just see how that plays out. I don't exactly know what that means, but yeah, we could be coming back into the wild, wild west a little bit. We'll see what happens. But the commission will no longer be set by NAR policy. And take a step back for anyone that doesn't understand, the National Association of Realtors is an organization that people, if you're part of an MLS currently, you have to be a member of NAR, National Association of Realtors, to have that Realtor designation, which is different than just being a real estate agent.
Yes, at least in our area. So again, you get your real estate license, and then you have to go through some additional courses and pay fees to become a member of the National Association of Realtors, and then like the local state, in our case, the California Association of Realtors, and those are your governing bodies that kind of oversee what you're doing that way and things of that way. So yeah. So I don't exactly know what it means when you have to say you don't have to follow the code of ethics anymore. There's going to be some it'll be a little bit of the Wild West out there, and I'm sure we're going to see some interesting stuff happen that way. But like I was saying, that the commission will no longer be noted in the MLS for agents to see. I don't think it's going to be a huge change, but I guess if you're looking for that field, you won't see it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think certainly if there's a listing that is offering, currently as it stands, if there's a listing that offered 1%, I think a lot of buyer's agents would be less inclined to send that listing to their client as a buyer. And this is prior to this whole lawsuit, obviously.
Right.
When you could see that buyer side commission, which now is public information, which was a whole nother lawsuit. Mm-hmm. But certainly, I could see buyer's agents doing that, not showing a property because of the level of compensation.
Yeah, there's going to be some language and some forms saying that we can't do that. But yeah, I still potentially, I hope that's not the case. We'll see how it plays out. But again, it may come down to a fact where buyers are going to have to start paying. Buyers maybe asked have to is a really poor choice of words in this case.
Right.
But there's going to be a conversation with the buyers like, hey, if the sellers aren't offering commission, I'm providing the service, I have to be compensated somehow that way.
Right.
So those conversations will come up that way. But I think I don't think. there's going to be huge changes in the industry. I mean, in terms of, I think there's going to be downward pressure on commissions, but I think that people still need proper representation, especially in our market. And even more so in like Sonoma County's market,
Totally.
because if this was an area that had a lot of new homes, 2,000 or 3,000 new homes of all similar models, and then I could think like things can be each transaction is going to be somewhat more similar. Here, every home is a different era, so completely different that way. So trying to find value and things of that nature becomes more complicated. So
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to get to next. You look at areas like Sacramento, for example, where you have 2,000 homes in a neighborhood that are similar in design. I compare it a little bit to price per square foot. Mm-hmm. In Sonoma County, you can't value any single property based on price per square foot. But you look in areas like Sacramento, it's pretty similar across the board, and a whole separate conversation. That's why the AI, artificial intelligence valuation models work in areas like that, but don't work so much here. Right. But my point in all that is when you have all those homes that are so similar, you don't have, like you said, the differentialities of, easements or looking at foundations,
or like you said, maybe if it's on a well or septic or something of that nature.
Yeah, you can't automate that. It's not something where I just see people, they're going to want a little bit more hand-holding here. And quite frankly, if you're not in the industry, you need that hand-holding. There's no way that you're going to understand how to read all of these reports if you don't read them every day.
Right. I mean, I think like if you're lucky, most people will sell a home 3 to 5 times in their entire lifetime. So it's not something they're doing on a routine basis. So you're not doing it often enough every time it's new.
Right.
And so many things can go wrong. And on that note, in 2001, 60% of home buyers were represented by buyer's agents. That was before like Zillow and the web portals and things of that nature. Today, almost 90% use buy-side agents. And that's because the real estate market has become more complex and they want that representation.
Especially from a negotiation standpoint.
Yes.
I mean, think about, I can wholeheartedly say on probably the last 3 buy-side transactions I can think of, I negotiated tens of thousands of dollars off the sales price or the previously agreed upon sale price after we
something comes up that way. Yeah. No. So people want representation, but they want good representation. And that's really what the issue is here, is that they were paying an agent's commission, but they weren't getting good representation. And that's what it really comes down to, is having good representation and making sure that you have someone that's full-time in the industry, that's really involved in the industry, that's constantly trying to hone their craft and learn about what's going on, versus someone that just got in and it's not going to be here in 18 months and things are just good right now and that's why they're there. I mean, people need good representation, and hopefully this lawsuit clears out some of the field and leaves the good full-time agents around that way.
Totally. So that's what the industry needs. It's needed for a long time, especially during the frenzy in the last 36 months. So
yes.
If that's what comes out of this whole situation, I think it's better for everyone.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that hopefully we'll get some new leadership at the NAR positions and they'll advance, because, like you said earlier, I think they had their head in the sand and they continue to do still a little bit. They shouldn't be trying to protect the old way, and that's what got us here to begin with. Is that they were they aren't listening to the consumer, and so they're trying to protect the old way, and just like listening to them now.
They're trying to justify their reasoning of why
it's time to move forward. We need new leadership. Like the people in place just don't get it. So it's the consumers are asking for it. So
maybe there's a new governing body that comes out of all of this.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So one way or the other, I think change is uncomfortable, but and this will be uncomfortable for a while. But I think it'll be a good thing for the industry going forward that way. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anything else you want to get across?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything from a broad picture. There's so many details we go down a million rabbit holes, but
and some of this, like, we are speculating. Again, the judge hasn't given his injunction yet and talked about the final terms, so we just don't know. So we're speculating. So
I do want to say one thing though. I hear a lot of people within our industry saying that there will be an appeal of the case. There will certainly be an appeal. Let's make it very clear that it's not going to be overruled. The only thing that's going to be changed is the settlement amount. It was a unanimous decision that they were found guilty.
Right.
Let's all be in the same realm.
The jury took 1 hour to deliberate, and then they came back and asked for the compensation model. And then they took another hour and a half. So 2.5 hours total of deliberation, but 1 hour, and they came back and said, hey, how much can we make these guys pay?
Right.
And realized that, like, NAR's defense is basically the witnesses didn't play fair, that they made things too emotional, and that's persuade jurors and things of that nature. Like, if you're a real estate professional and you're holding on to this appeal, like, we're in big trouble. like just face the facts that way. It's not going to look good. And we're not, I would be shocked if this case goes back to court. It'll be settled here in the next 30, 60, 90 days or something like that. So,
and on that note, after this case was, after the jury found them guilty, there was additional lawsuits that were filed immediately after, but that's a whole other podcast. Basically the same lawsuit at different brokerages was filed that way. So it's going to continue until this gets resolved and the industry faces it. So, all right. Well, thanks as always for another good podcast. If you enjoyed this content, please hit like and subscribe so you'll see future episodes. I'm Sean Payne. I'm Isaiah Chast. Tune in and comment if you have any questions that we did not answer or would like us to answer in a future video.
Yep. Welcome to the Housing Signal. See you later. Welcome to the Live Explore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.